It's time now for our head-to-head. A mass rally of support of Palestine drew thousands of protesters to central London this afternoon, despite the fact a Gaza ceasefire is expected to be observed from tomorrow morning. The Met Police confirmed more than 1,100 officers were deployed to the capital as over 70 people were arrested as signs apparently praising Hamas and displaying swastikas were spotted. Wow. Protesters initially planned to march on the BBC's broadcasting house, but this was blocked as it was close proximity to a synagogue, which was deemed a security risk. So I'm asking, should today's march have gone ahead in the first place? Joining me now, former Scotland Yard detective Peter Bleksley and broadcaster and neurodiversity coach Fahima Mahmood. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Guys, why should the public keep paying for police time when a foreign war has nothing to do with us? Peter, surely this is draining police resources.
It very much is, and out of that more than 1,000 police officers deployed this afternoon, many of those will have been drawn away from policing their local communities, neighbourhoods, boroughs, investigating crime, preventing crime and serving victims. But they're dragged away to central London to police a mob who gathered today largely with criminal intent at the front of their minds. We've seen a whole raft of offences committed today, from assaulting emergency workers, police officers being spat at, an Israeli flag having a swastika attached to it and displayed with it, many other appalling, revolting crimes by people who support terrorist organisations and want to commit genocide on the entire Jewish faith. It's about time these protests were stopped. I commend the Met Police for their robust, if somewhat overdue, attitude today, and believe you me, there are many more arrests to come.
Fahima, this is a great point from Peter. Look, we've seen 70 arrests. If this was a large-scale football match, this would lead every news bulletin. Why are we so tolerant of these protests, and why should they continue?
Well, we're not tolerant of it. And today...
I think we are. I think we're very tolerant of it. We've been having them for almost a year.
Yes, and that includes, as Peter Bleksley has described, the group being a mob. While today there were 13 Holocaust survivors and survivor descendants who have written an open letter opposing the ban to the national demonstration taking place outside the BBC today. And statistics show that close to 1,000 Jews signed that open letter opposing restrictions in the pro-Palestinian protests. And the letter was organized by the Jewish community, including prominent academics, lawyers, activists, highlighting their opposition to the framing of pro-Palestinian marches as threatening through to the Jewish communities. And they actually are only there in solidarity for the actual massacres of children that since the ceasefire was announced on Wednesday, over 130 people were actually killed up till today for the last 3 or 4 days, when it was just mainly women and children. Why are people not understanding that? That is not a Hamas supporter. We're not supporting terrorists. There are not mobs.
Let's talk about the Jewish community for a second, because you've pointed to a small minority of them who may have signed this letter. But, you know, anti-Semitism has gone up thousands of % since these protests started. So you can understand why perhaps there was a blockage of this outside and near a synagogue. Can you not sympathise with that?
Absolutely. I don't think any religious group should be targeted or should be threatened in any way. And those people should be arrested if that was what their intent was. And there is always going to be disruption and an isolated case where that happens. And the amount of people arrested, if they were outside the jurisdiction of how people should protest peacefully and calmly accordance with the UK law, then that is absolutely okay. But it should not be deemed as everybody as being mobs or also Hamas supporters. Because if anything, there's the ministers of the Netanyahu administration who has actually accused Netanyahu's government and him for actually promoting and supporting Hamas in the first place, for them to be here.
Look, Peter, I want to bring you back in here. Suella Braverman's described these marches as hate marches before. Do you think that's a fair description of them to this day?
Unlike my co-debater this evening, I will stick to the matter in hand, which is whether these protests should take place or not. They have gone on now for almost 15 months. In the early days, the Met Police appallingly had a policy of appeasing so many on these protests. And when you appease people, you empower them. And we've seen the behaviour of the thugs attending this march just get worse and worse and worse, culminating today in 77 arrests for many, many offences, including assaults and one for sexual assault. And the behaviour is getting worse. It is time now to ban these marches. Their point has been made. The criminality is increasing. A ceasefire should come in place tomorrow. Enough is enough.
Fahima, look, I mean, Peter's got a good point. Like, these protests have been going on for a very, very long time. Surely the point has been made. The ceasefire is done. Are the pro-Palestine marches just going to become as much of a nuisance as Just Stop Oil? Because, you know, we're blocking roads. We're costing the taxpayer thousands of pounds. We're taking the police away from solving actual crimes. And we're having to arrest and lock up potentially 70 people or so. Surely you can see there's going to be a disconnect here between the vast majority of the British public who go, we get what you have to say, but now it's time to stop.
It's not going to stop because this is against humanitarian law and international law.
But what's that got to do with Britain?
Because they are also being deemed as complicit in also supporting this. So at the end of the day, it is definitely something indirect. You know, there's, sort of people that are also analysts that are saying that there are drones, there are weapons, there are lots of, money also being given by the support of the British government. So that's why there is a direct correlation to this. If you're complaining about, what's been taken away from the British citizens, which they are owed to have, whether it's winter fuel and amounts, but then they are giving away in foreign sort of, aid and things like that to Israel. So at the end of the day, we need to obviously take that on board. And there are, the British values and the British people have 70% of them do actually go against the war in Palestine. So that's the YouGov statistics. So they are definitely concerned about the fact that the West proclaimed to be, these humanitarian and the West having non-barbaric and authoritarian.
Yeah, the government have called for a ceasefire. We've had the David Lammy calling for a ceasefire. We have the Prime Minister calling for a ceasefire.
Netanyahu and your
But Netanyahu's not our Prime Minister. I mean, look, anyway, Peter, just over to you quickly.
He's not called for a permanent ceasefire.
Yes.
Just over to you, Peter. Peter, listen, I want to ask you, is this showing community divides in Britain growing ever worse? And obviously, Fahim is saying these protests aren't going to stop. Can you see this getting to a boiling point in Britain? Are British people going to have enough of this stuff? We've already had the Just Stop Oil protests plaguing us for 24 months.
Yeah, and I sincerely hope now that our judiciary wake up and hand down suitable punishments to the people arrested today, if and when they're convicted, like they have been doing recently with Just Stop Oil. We need stiff, deterrent jail terms to stop these people from bringing their thuggery to central London, affecting the economy, making London virtually uninhabitable for law-abiding shoppers, tourists, theatre-goers and the such like. The Met Police can ban these protests. They do have the power. Now is the time to do exactly that. OK, final word to you, Fahima. If you had one thing to say to the British government in a sentence, what would you implore them to do? Stop
basically supporting a genocide, which is being proclaimed by even Jewish figures and the actual historian Amos Goldberg, the chair of the Holocaust studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, that says what's happening in Gaza at this moment is a genocide because Gaza is not in existence anymore. And these are Jewish voices. Don't listen to me because I'm a Muslim. Obviously, it doesn't matter. Listen to the Jewish voices themselves, minority or not.
Sorry, Fahima, I have to wrap it up there. But Peter, Fahima, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Fiery stuff, very fiery stuff.